I think it's Friday. It's June 5th, 2020. Hello. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining. We're going to have our usual Friday Q&A session here. We're gonna talk about trombone stuff, but before we get to that, I think that I wanted to just talk a little bit about and use this platform just to share a few things about what's been going on this week. And I wrote a piece a few years ago, which I want to open this up with. I wrote it. I know exactly. I remember Obama had just signed the Marriage Equality Act, and I felt like, oh, finally some sort of forward motion is happening with our political system, basically. And I guess nothing too much has changed. We still need more progress, and but I just wanted to share this at the beginning and rededicate it to everyone in the Black Lives Matter movement and George Floyd and his family. And this is a piece that I wrote. It's on the Here and Now album. But so we're going to play this for everyone, and then we'll jump in to the Q&A after that. So here we go. There's Love Wins. I just wanted to share that at the beginning of the show today, and just to let people know where I stand, and to try to be as supportive as I can using whatever little platform that I do have, either here on Instagram or on Facebook or wherever you might be watching later in the future. So I hope you'll join me in being supportive and continuing to be supportive, not just this week, but into the future and forever, as we should have been all along. So I hope that this gives us a chance to do better, you know. So thanks for being here. Hey, Isria, miss you, man. Hope we get to play music sometime soon. So yeah, I know it's yeah. There's just a lot of things to say, a lot of things that I think other people have said it better. So I'm going to let them stick with the words, and I'll stick with the music. If you want to, if you're here, we're going to transition to answering a few questions if you like. If not, I'm happy to have this episode be, a quick one, and one that's definitely just whatever you guys want to talk about for however long, doesn't matter. And just fixing this real quick, but I have a few questions that came in through the week, and I wanted to start off with this one question. Feel free to drop some in on Facebook if you're watching, or Twitter, or if you're watching on Instagram, wherever you happen to be. Please feel free to drop in a question. And so this one comes from Stacy Riley Artist. She wrote this question actually last week in response to last week, or was it last week? Yeah, last week's Instagram live that we had, and she posted this on Instagram. She wrote about this, and I think it's really important. She said, "I've observed that some players are technically great and their skill is admirable, but their playing doesn't necessarily elicit emotion from the listener, which I personally deem essential," she says. And then, in your opinion, what is it that separates an emotional player from someone who is merely technical and academically proficient? So I think you have to open yourself up to playing with emotion and listen to players that play that way, I can't think of a lot of players that I'm really drawn to that don't play with, fire and emotion and try to bring joy through their music or some other emotion, whatever it might be in the nature of the piece. But you have to be first aware that that's what your goal is, that, there's no reason to be playing the music unless you're trying to connect with somebody, right? Especially for an audience, you're trying to get them to connect to the music. You're trying to get them to appreciate and feel something. I don't know but I think the intention comes first. And sometimes we get wrapped up, especially in educational circles, academia, with like the what, meaning the measurable what, like these scales, these notes, these songs. And then we don't have time, or we don't have a way to measure what is the emotional content. How do you grade the emotion of a piece? Like, you can say if somebody played with musicality, it's always going to be subjective. So it's one of those, I don't know if it's not really dangerous, but it's one of those things where it's hard to measure. So it's hard for people to put like a quantitative judgment on it, which is what people mostly want to do in an academic situation, educational situation. So that's why I think it gets neglected. It's something that I try to connect with my students about. Like, what's the point of playing this? Why are we playing this song rather than any other song? It doesn't have to be this blues. It could be any blues. Why are you picking this one? Why are you picking the standard? Why are you picking these songs to play? There's some reason why you're doing that. So you might as well do that, So I don't know how exactly to get there without just being, number one, aware, and then taking active steps to listen and play music with other people. I've said this many times on this stream before, but the answer is like, what do I need to be doing right now? What does the band need? What does the music need? What does the music need right now? That's the question I'm constantly trying to ask myself about what's happening, to play musically. That's kind of where I'm at, and I feel like the technical side is only enhancing your ability to communicate that effectively, right? Everything you do on the technical side is all in the service, at least for me, in the service of trying to make better music and try to be more musical. So, I don't know, Stacy, it's a kind of complicated question, but you have to be, number one, open to it first, and then trying to really let it shine through. You have to try to connect with people and connect and allow yourself to have an opinion and have an instinct for creating music rather than just blabbing out a bunch of technical scales and all this kind of stuff. So it's something that has to be cultivated over time, and it has to be cultivated by playing with other people that do it, watching groups and musicians that do it, being aware of how do I do that? How do I get there? How do I contribute to this situation? Sometimes what you want to play, oftentimes at least, what you want to play is not necessarily the thing that's going to be most useful to everyone in that situation, or most useful to the listener, at least in my experience. So I see a question here coming in. Let's bring it up here on the stream from Lazam BTS. I saw somebody else said hello. Let me go back. Sneakerhead homie, what's up? Thanks for dropping by. Lazam BTS. Hey Nick, hope you well. Do you ever feel in practice that you're not making progress in your practice? Hey Lance, how you doing, man? Hope you're doing well. Do you ever feel in practice you're not? Yeah, of course. I feel all the time like I'm not making sufficient progress in practice, but that's why I always try to encourage people to try using a practice journal or some other type of tracking system, like just your notes app on your phone, or something where you can measure what you did and how much you were able to do in a certain period of time. Like over a few weeks, you look back and say, oh, I did actually do a bunch of stuff. I did not just flap my wings. I didn't just kind of go in a circle. I actually made progress on certain things. But some things are so incremental, especially the fundamentals, that it really takes a long time to be able to see how it's actually getting better. It's going to take long tones, articulation exercises, flexibilities over years, before you actually are able to measure that change in how much better you're getting. So I start to try to think okay, if I can do something every day for 3 months or 6 months, in a year, I might be able to actually have a more developed sense of this. So yes, the answer is always yes. It always feels like we're not making progress in the moment, but that's why I think it's important to balance how you're working on things, both with goals that are measurable, so you can say I'm doing this and I'm achieving this. That might be a time goal, a frequency goal, learning tunes or memorizing something, or getting through some other measurable thing like a scale exercise or something where you can be I did this thing and feel like you're making progress. But then also constant work on the fundamentals to raise the bar of the lowest common denominator, if that makes sense. Your worst day is going to keep on getting better and better, and that's the goal with the fundamentals. Just try to get it better every day. Trombone Mouse, I see you. Hello, thanks for joining. So yes, the short answer is I'm always thinking that I'm not making progress, but I think we actually are making more progress than we think if you stick with it. If you stick and make a plan, stick with your practice plan, focus on the fundamentals, and they will never do you wrong. That's where I'm at with that for sure. Here's another question from Patrick O'Brien Trombone here on Instagram. If you are on Facebook, you can also feel free to drop in a question. I'll see it. It'll pop up here on my screen. How do you open up your low register? Couple ways is one, don't neglect it. Number one, go head on with it and make sure you're using it every day, playing long tones in the low register. A lot of times it has to do with, and it has nothing to do with equipment, in my opinion. It has to do with sound concept, and it has to do with the amount of time you're putting into playing in the lower register. I decided that I wanted to be able to play the entire register of the trombone at some point, and so I was going to use the whole register, so that meant I needed to get it to a point where it sounded good. So one, make sure you're opening the vowel sound on the inside of your mouth so that it has an O in the low register, so do, like a D-O-H kind of thing. That's number one. Make sure it's doing that. And then what I like to do is I find a note that's resonant. It might be like F, for example, in the middle of the staff. And then I might gliss down to C, trying to keep that same resonance. Then I might go to B natural, make sure it has that same resonance out in seventh. And then I'm going to play the B flat, the low B flat, make sure it has the same resonance as the F. It has the same resonance as the F. And then you match that B flat resonance to the F resonance. And then if you get that B flat feeling nice and good, then you do the same thing. Match the resonance of the B flat to the A, the B flat to the A flat, to the G. And I know that seems like super like nitty gritty, but I think that it's super important to be that nitty gritty in the way that you are addressing these issues, like these fundamental issues of opening up the lower register, using the lower register, not ignoring the lower register. A lot of trombone jazz players say that they're going to work on their upper register, or how do I play higher? How do I do this? Well, you have to develop in both directions. You can't do one without the other, unfortunately, at least in my experience. You know, the more you can develop the pedal register, the more you can develop the upper register. And the last thing that I would do to open up the low register is start to play false tones in the low register. So even if you have a valve, an F attachment, I would go to playing false tones. Like I have a bunch of exercises in various places on the internet about doing false tones. And they really help you to open up your sound, and they help you to focus your sound, and especially in the lower register, and you can kind of match up the intonation and all of that kind of stuff. So I recommend that. False tones, vowel sounds, and not neglecting it is the short answer to that question of how do you open up the lower register. So hope that helps you, Patrick. It's Friday, June 5th. If you're just joining us, thanks for jumping on for a minute today and talking a little bit about trombone stuff, talking about you're welcome, Patrick. We shared a track, Love Wins, dedicating that to the family of George Floyd and all the Black Lives Matter movement, and wanted to do that today. And so if there's not any other questions, I'm just going to kind of jump off for today. But I appreciate you all being here, and we'll be back again next week on Thursday and Friday to do our trading sessions and Q&A sessions. But as always, if you have questions during the week, feel free to send them in, and I will get them in the queue for next week, just like we did with Stacy earlier at the beginning of the show today. So I hope everyone can have a safe weekend, and thanks for watching, and we will see you again real soon.